Hello and welcome to the final game for Computer Science 440. This is game number 5, created by Alex Brown. As I will do in the previous 4 videos, I will go over my code first and then I will demo the game. I did make a quite long game, so it might take about 20 minutes just to demo the whole thing because I tried to pack a lot into it and there's a lot of things I still wanted to do, but ultimately I had to call it enough as much as I wanted to add more to it. Anyway, here's the standard H and CPP files for the sprite sheet. It's largely similar to game number 4. The main difference is a lot of friend functions because I'm using a bunch of tile values for the map. I do realize I could have merged this together and had it return the value instead, and then uh, do an if statement inside the while loop, depending on what number it is, in order to get rid of the repetitiveness of the functions. But ultimately, I liked it like this, so I just know which value is which. So that's what all these do. And then in here, I have the same thing. I have a collision for each of these friend functions, the same way that was in the original, where you just had one collision detection. So I just have collision for everything I need. These are all my variables, largely the same. Uh, the only difference is this variable for the movement speed and this variable to trigger the collision sound when the player hits a wall. And then this is my wall hitting sound sample. CPP again is mostly identical except for all of the friend collision functions involved. I set my pointers to null. I destroy them here. I initialize everything in this constructor, all my frames for my guy. I load the sprite. I load the sample here, and I check to make sure it works. Otherwise, it closes the game immediately. Update sprites. Not much has changed from game number 4, except for just the frame count since I'm using a different image. So there's nothing to add on all of that. Again, the collision detection, largely the same except for this collision variable. I set it to true here. And then if it's true, I set it back to false and I play the sample sound. So that means the player hit a wall. These are all my collision functions. I shrunk them so I just return the function value so I don't have the if else portion. So it's simply a return statement. It either returns true or false to the main game loop. That's all of those do. I draw my sprite, nothing changed. Functions exactly the same way as before, and also the set start works exactly the same. So there's largely not many changes other than all the friend functions. Here's my main. I use a bunch of functions here. These are for all the values of the tiles, which mimic the friend functions. They're the same ones. Tile collision. I have my start screen. I wanted to break up the main game as much as I wanted to. So my as in game 4, I had the start screen all at the beginning of main. I usually had it right here, like all of that code. Instead, I put it inside a function instead to make it a little bit neater. This function controls the darkness of the game, specifically for map 2. I added a darkness overlay, so you can only see a portion of the screen at one time, depending on the player's movement. And in my second level, I expand what you can see every time you pick up the item that you're looking for. So I thought it was a nice touch to the game. That way you can't see the entire maze all at once. So you have a better understanding of where to go. It's truly a maze because you can't see very far in front of you. This is the game timer function. I use 2 timers. One is the main game loop, which keeps track of your time completion, and the other one is used for a puzzle room in map number 1 or level 1, which is a 15-second timer. So they activate simultaneously. Uh, so I have multiple timers. The overall timer keeps track of your health because I use health as your status bar, and every 15 seconds you lose health. It'll be shown later in the code, but my other timers do not use the health timer. But I still pass it in so I wouldn't have to create an extra function. But this does not do anything on the other timers, so the health timer is not affected otherwise. Uh, I added game messages for when the player does certain actions. Uh, it was rather tedious to code in many of them, so I did 7 for when the player just interacts for certain things. I wanted to do more with it, but as I just said, it was rather tedious to implement one by one. So I did enough to where I figured it was sufficient. And again, with the starting screen, I moved it inside a function for where you win or lose. I do pass a ton of functions in, or a bunch of parameters, but it enables me to uh, have the win or lose screen in one function instead of having 2 functions with mostly identical parameters. Really, the only difference would be the win lose variable. I'd only pass one of those in, and I'd only pass this in if you won. So there wouldn't be much difference between the two if I separated them anyway. Anyway, inside my main game loop, your traditional variables to set everything up. I use a floater here for the map because since you can only have 6 or 7 layers on one map at a time, otherwise you'd have to load in more layers. I instead created a second map of my level 1. So once you get to a certain point, it loads the part 2 of the map. So I use a float variable to, instead of an integer, to signal that, hey, you're still on level 1. So it becomes 1.5 later. And after that, I mostly use integers, but that's why it's a float instead of an integer. Uh, I actually don't use this variable anymore. I forgot to take this out. Uh, I set the health of the player. This is the health timer. It reduces the player's health every, I actually made this 15 now instead of 20. Anyway, I set it to 10 normally. This is keeps track of the map layers, so it's initially 0. It goes up to 6, and then it resets, and then it goes up to 6 again, then you finish. These two variables help with timers to make sure it doesn't activate what I want it to do more than once at a time. Otherwise, it would just keep repeatedly doing what I tell it to, and I only need it to send it out once per event. These are just the number of messages that I have the player interact with. So a message will pop up when you do a certain action. That's just for setting this Boolean. And these are all variables having to do with message interaction. I'll explain more later. My simple win lose variables and all my Allegro stuff here. Uh, this is just the traditional Allegro initializing my class. Here are all my sound samples that I'm using. I would have liked more to use more inside the class, but the way it's set up, I mean, I only use this for the sprite, so only one sound is needed inside, where all the rest are used elsewhere. Anyway, I make sure the audio works. I use this variable instead of hard coding it, uh, just the number of sounds I need. So here's 14 sounds, and then the 15th sound is the hit uh, sound. Yeah. I missed these comments. Give me a second to fill those in. Apologies about that. There we go. Also don't need this. Forgot to take that out. Anyway, once I load all my music, I make sure all the audio works. So that's all this if statement does. It makes sure if any of them do not work, it cancels the game immediately. And a more traditional setup uh, that you've seen in all of them. I load my first map here, which is part 1. I load all my fonts here that I use. I load all my backgrounds. This is the background for the starting screen. This is used for instructions. Since the player only moves up, down, left, and right, I just have a picture having arrows that are up, down, left, and right. So I figured that was a pretty cool way of just showing what you need to do. So there's nothing else included. And then just the winning and losing backgrounds. This is where I call my start screen. I pass in all those variables. Since I pass in both of these, I pass in the fonts I use. I have to pass in the event queue because I wait until the user presses a key before continuing. And then I have to pass in the width and height to place the text on the screen, and then the done variable in case they close out or escape the game. After they finish with the start screen, they press any key, I destroy the sample starting music because I don't want it to playing once they exit the start screen. So I destroy the music and it cuts it off right then and there. I was actually surprised this worked the way it did. When I first did it, I assumed it would crash the game because the music is gone. So if it's still playing, I figured it would crash it, but I was surprised it did not. It cut it off completely and worked flawlessly. Uh, Here I draw the background in the player sprite. I put it inside an if statement because if the player exited the game or closed it out of the window on the start screen, it would flash the map very briefly before closing the window. So this just prevents that from happening. It just straight up closes it. You don't see anything else happen in the game. Here are my timers. This is for the health and time completion timer counter. So it keeps track of health ticks and it also keeps track of time in the game. This is my puzzle room timer. For the small puzzle room in map number 1, it's a 15-second counter, as I said. That's just what this is for. And this is my message timer. When the user interacts with certain stuff and it displays a message, this just has a timer which is mostly 3 seconds and 10 seconds on some messages towards the end of the game. So it displays it for 3 seconds and then it goes away. And as always, I flip and clear it here. These are my darkness variables to to black out the screen except around the player on a certain distance. Uh, in order to make them perfect squares, I have this formula here. You just set D1 to a multiple of 16, and then D2 is whatever D1 is plus 32 of that. So it'll create a perfect square around the player at all times as long as you follow that formula. So that's all I use for that. And in map number 1, I don't change these variables, but in map number 2, I do. These are just my timer variables. Uh, this is, as I said, the puzzle timer, 15-second timer. Otherwise, it resets the area and you lose some health. This is the total time completion, so it keeps track of how long you've been inside the game. This variable is for my gargoyle puzzle in level 2. It just makes sure the triggers I have once you find the gargoyle do not activate more than once, as I said before about something else. I start the timer here because I don't want the timer starting anywhere before that. Uh, I start my background music here, and now I enter my game loop. Here is my timer function, which keeps track of all 3 timers quite well. Instead of game 4, where I had like 2 sections of timer that were mostly similar but slightly different, I put it all inside a function where, as I said, the game time uses the health timer, but the other 2 timers do not. I pass it in, but nothing happens with it, so it doesn't get changed accidentally. Anyway, once the health timer, oh, I forgot to mention, all of these are passed in by reference since I'm using a function. Once the health timer reaches 15, I subtract health from the player. So you only have a limited you technically have a limited amount of time inside the game if you can't find uh, the items you're looking for. So if you're this means that you're on map 1, so you lose 1 health, but if you're on map 2, you lose 2 health. And then I just reset the health timer. So it continues like this until you hit 0. If your health reaches 0, that means you're dead. It plays the death music, sets lose to true, and I rest for 1.7 seconds because that's the length of this sound. So I want this to play out and then the death screen happens. Otherwise they overlap with each other. The death sound is 1.6 seconds, so that's why I made it 1.7 here. This is for when the player enters the puzzle room. I have it up here. So they enter through this. Uh, the code for is actually slightly below this area. But anyway, I used the puzzle timer here. As you see, I pass in the puzzle timer instead of the total time. And I pass in the health timer, which isn't used since I need something in there. And then I check if the puzzle is 0 and the layer is less than 4. That means they haven't completed the puzzle yet, because once they reach layer 4, that means the puzzle is over. And if they ran out of time completing the puzzle, that means they lose 15 health. I reset the puzzle. I reset their player position, which is the start of the puzzle. And I set the layer back to 0 because this means at this point you're in part 2 of level 1. So the layer you're on is 0 at the time. So I set it back to 0 because 0 through 3 is the puzzle room. And I reset the time as well. Now, if the layer is greater than 3, which means you completed the puzzle, it just sets the variables to false repeatedly, so it never activates the puzzle room again because you're done with it. These two variables, I have hidden tiles inside my map to trigger the timer or not. So once you reach a certain point near the timer room, or sorry, the puzzle room, it'll activate the timer. And if you step away enough, it'll deactivate the timer without health loss. Here, here's where I update everything. My timer, since I took out that variable and I don't use that anymore, I need to remove that too. Timer update, as usual, I update the animated tiles. I really don't have too many. I do use map 2 with some animated tiles mostly. Map 1 doesn't have any that I recall. No, it does not. But map 2 uses a lot of animated tiles for the ending and stuff. But that's all I updated there. Here I check to see if the player reached the exit. I implemented by +5 or 0.5 because when you complete level 1, the map is actually 1.5, so I want to make it 2, so that's why it's 0.5. Then afterwards, the map will equal 6 when you've completed it, and then I just add 0.5. So that means it 6.5, which will mean you won the game. But anyway, once it equals 2, I load map number 2, and I play the sound I wanted to make when you enter the exit. So you finish the level, it plays that sound. I stop the timer here so the player cannot move while I'm pausing the game briefly. I set the new player coordinates, I load the second map, I reset the layer, and I restart the timer and game time. All right, let's see. And like I said, if you reach the end of both levels, that means you won. I play the same sound again as up here, and I do have a sound playing if you reach the end of the second level. So if you head to the exit before that music finishes playing, I destroy it. So it cuts it off just like the starting music. And I actually no longer need this. Sorry about that. All right. And then this just closes the game instantly if they close the window or press escape, etc., etc. Just key down and key up event. Nothing changed. And here's my render function where I check all of my collision. So if they ran into a trap, which is in map 2, I have animated tiles that you cannot touch. If you do, this activates. It plays uh, a sound. It sets the boolean to true, which means you hit the trap, which is a game. This is used for a game message, the interaction boolean, which you saw up top. You lose 10 health, and it resets the player position to a certain point at the beginning of the area. This is where I check everything else pretty much. I make sure if any of these are true, it enters this, and then I differentiate between any of them. So if you hit a key, you hit a switch, you get a gem, gargle, or you finish the collision finish is when you reach the end of the game. You're right before the door, and then it activates that sound I just mentioned before, where I destroyed the sound. If you reach the door before it played, that's what that does. So first of all, I increment the layer change for later. If you reach the end of map level 2 near the door, it'll destroy the background music, and it'll play my ending music. Because once you reach this point, I change the layer to 6 again, and it has a bunch of animations on the screen that I have happen, so I have this music playing during that to basically signal the end of the game. I do the same thing with the gargoyle. So I have a gargoyle puzzle room where there's identical gargoyles, about I don't remember 12 or so throughout the room, and you have to find the correct one, which is basically like a switch. And once you find the correct one, then this happens. So they all look identical. I just copied the same tile and had one value on one and no value on the other. So once you find the one with the value, it triggers this function. So it plays the gargoyle sound and it sets this to true. This is also to prevent the gargoyle from changing the layer more than once. Because otherwise, if you stand on it and this wasn't here, it would basically break the game because it would continually change the layer when it shouldn't be doing that. It only does it once. If the player collides with a key, uh, this has to do with level 1. There's, I believe, 5 or 6 keys you have to find in level 1 in order to complete the level. So every time you get a key, you get plus 5 health back. And since the chest also counts as a key, I just differentiated between the two. So if they get a chest, which means the final layer is 6, because that's what the maximum layer is for map 1, uh, and you're on map 1, then you play the chest sound, you set the chest interaction to true, and I extend the game timer or the message timer. Normally it's 3 seconds for everything, but when you get the chest in level 1 or you get the final gem in level 2, I extend the timer. So here it's 6 seconds, but otherwise it's 3. And then if they got the chest, it does that. Otherwise, they got a key, it plays the key sound, and they got the key here. And this is the key message interaction, which I'll show further down. The same thing happens with the gems. If they collide with a gem, I play the gem sound. They gain 10 health back since you lose 2 health every 15 seconds instead of 1. So you get 10 health back, and the message timer becomes 10 seconds if they found the 4th gem. Otherwise, it just sets the gem message to true. I have a different message for when they find the 4th gem, so I don't have an interaction here. I do the same thing with the switch. If they finish the switch puzzle, which is there's 4 switches in the puzzle. Once they hit the 4th switch, it does a different interaction. Otherwise, it just does a normal switch sound and a second interaction for hitting a switch. This just makes sure your health does not go past 100. So if it is over 100, it sets it to 100. This is where I change the darkness level. If you're on map number 2, I'll explain more in the function later, but that's all this does. This checks to make sure you completed part 1 of map 1. So once you reach a certain point in the first level, this will activate and load the second part of map 1. So that's all I do. There's nothing special here. I set it to 1.5. I stop the timer briefly, so during the rest period you can't move your character. And after all that, I changed the map with this function from the Mappy A5 area. This just activates the treasure chest message. So once they reach a treasure chest, it uses this message uh, to display to the screen. And again, if they stand on top of the chest, I did not want it spamming it, so it happens only once. So that's what this variable is for. This makes sure a message is not currently on the screen. So the way I have it set up is only one message is on the screen at one time, although there's very few instances, if at all, where multiple messages will happen at the same time anyway. So if message is not true, then it loops through the message uh, interactions, and if it finds one that's true, I set the number to I, which I use shortly to display the message at the bottom. I set the timer and I set message to true, so it doesn't go enter this loop again. And after it hits this if statement, if message is now true, which is right here, it breaks the for loops because it doesn't want to look for any more because only one is active at one time. Here's the standard X off stuff for the scrolling, nothing special, drawing the map again. I use these same variables I did for map number 4, but instead I use them for the darkness setting. So here's where I draw the darkness. I erase the darkness completely when the map layer equals 6, which means you found the chest and you found all 4 gems. So once either of those happen, then it does not do the darkness anymore. But otherwise, this covers the entire map except around the player with a certain radius. I draw the player here. Here's my status bar, just displays the health above the player. Uh, This displays the timer above the player once they've entered the puzzle room. So it's only there briefly once switches is activated. And here is where I display the message. So if message equals true, which happened up here, then it will display the game message. And I take care of that inside a function. I update the game timer here. And once the timer equals 0, I set message back to false. I set the message timer back to 3 seconds. And then I set all the message booleans back to false. Since I didn't know which one essentially would be true, I just set them all back to false. Made it easier. And then I flip and clear here. And then once the game is over, by winning or losing, I destroy the background music. Oh, sorry, this was for testing. When I was testing the win-lose screen, I don't need that anymore. But anyway, once they win or lose, I did another ending screen, as I mentioned. I couldn't really combine these into one, essentially. So if they won, it does the ending screen. If they lose, it does the losing screen. Really, the only difference is the background that's passed in. I could have probably merged them together, but at the time I wasn't sure how. But anyway, that's what those two do. And then it just waits until the player presses any key to exit the game instead of having a rest timer or like I did for game 4 where I gave control to the player. I do kind of give control to the player here where they just press any key to exit the game after that. Then I just destroy everything here. Destroy all my sounds that aren't destroyed inside the loop. Here's my start screen function. As you saw with all the variables, I just basically the same thing I did like with game 4, except it's in a function instead. So it displays everything, displays the text, flips the display, and it waits for the user to press any key to continue. Or they can close or escape, and it'll close instantly. Tile block collision, nothing's changed here. Here are all my values, which just gets the data of the and returns the value. So all of them are identical except for the user data. So that's what all of them do. There's really not much else to explain with all of them. Here's where I shift the darkness. So depending on uh, once they get to level 2, every gem they pick up, it will update the shift darkness area. So which basically means I expand the area they can view. So when they pick up the first gem, this activates. When they pick up the second gem, this activates. When they pick up the third gem, this activates. And then the fourth gem, this activates, and then the darkness goes away entirely. So, and the reason this is a 2 and a 4 is because my gargoyle puzzle, I do not want the darkness being to disappear more. So the gargoyle is layer 3, so I don't want it changing during that layer. Here's my game timer function, which is exactly like I did in the previous games. The only difference is the if else statement, which I pass in a single variable integer uh, so I know which timer I'm working with. If I pass in 0, that means I'm working with the game timer to keep track of the, which is basically the health timer as well, which keeps track of your total time. So if it's 0, it does this. If it's not 0, it just subtracts the time. So that's what the other 2 timers are for. Because I pass in 0 for this and 1 for the puzzle room and 2 for the other timer, the message timer. So if you're on the health timer, it reduces the health. Otherwise, it just reduces the timer. And the timer is different between the two, as you saw. Here's where I take care of all my game messages. I use this variable to center the text to the player screen as best as possible. And I just check the number variable that was inside the function is what I use to determine what action they did. So based on that number, I print the text to the screen. And as I said, this will repeat for 3 seconds on most of them until that time is up and then it goes away. Here's my ending screen credits. It passes in the background, so whether you won or lost, it'll pass in the correct background and I'll draw it. I have music playing depending on winning or losing, so it's also different music. And then if they won, it displays this text. If they lost, it displays that text. And then no matter what, it displays this on both of them. And then I flip the display. That concludes the code portion of game number 5. I'll briefly go over my maps. This is map number 1. Let me zoom in some. As you can see, it's rather large. Both maps are 100 by 100, and for the most part use at least 85% of the space. Towards the end, I kind of got a bit bored creating the maps, so that's why you see some empty space, but I tried to make it as large as possible, but ultimately it takes a lot of time making it. Anyway, the way it's set up is, let me change the layer. This is the starting game of the map. You see different tiles here and here and here because I have invisible sections of the map. So once you get this door open, this all goes black. You can't see anything during that. But I made a lot of shortcuts, so it's really not as hard as you think it is. While it is pitch black and you can't see anything, there's, like I said, there's a lot of shortcuts to get to the corner and through just fine. And I will mention that I added hidden shortcuts throughout the game. So after you complete certain areas, there are actually shortcuts. You can pass through the wall. You can clip through the wall just fine, which is on purpose in order to prevent you from, say, once you get this key, you have to go all the way back through here in order to get to this puzzle room. Instead, uh, I'm not going to say where the shortcuts are, and I'm not going to use them inside my demo, but they are there. You just have to find them. There's almost one for every key or gem you find. They're just they're close enough to where you might not find them, but they're not too difficult to find either. Just think of where they would be at, and you might be able to walk through the wall and save yourself some time. But as I said, I will not be showing them at all in my demo because I want you to find them. But anyway, to start off the game, you start off in the top left corner. First of all, you have to find the switch over here, and once you activate that, it will spawn the key here. And once you grab this key, it unlocks this key. And once you get this key, it unlocks that key. And then once you make your way around to this key, it unlocks this door. And as you saw, it just went black. So you no longer know where the path is, and you can't see the path ahead of time because the door's up here. I used to have the door down here, but then I realized you could see portions of the map. So instead of blacking out some of it on every layer, I just put the door up here. It's easier. And then once you get this key, that's when map number 2 triggers. So, and then it reveals the space of the game. Although I added a shortcut in the blackness here, but I didn't put that there when I drew it back. So, but anyway, it reveals the path so you can safely walk back through it. And then you make your way up to the puzzle room, and I have these blocks here. You can't tell since they're black as well, but once you pass over this, it triggers the time. So you got to get all 4 of these in 15 seconds, and or you can just exit the way you came, and it turns off the timer. And then once you get as you get each switch, they slowly disappear, as you see. And then once you get the 4th one, it unlocks the door over here. Again, there's a shortcut to where you don't even have to go over here at all and walk through all this in order to get up here. But as I said, I'm not going to show you where. But anyway, you make your way up to this invisible section, which is smaller than the other 2. And once you get that key, it reveals the path, and then the treasure room is open. Again, there is a secret passage to shorten the time to the treasure chest. And then once you get the treasure chest, it opens the exit, which unlocks those blocks. And then you exit through here. That completes map 1. Here is map number 2. This is the entirety. Basically, I split it up into 4 sections, so it's like 4 mini levels, although it's really 3 mini levels and then a section where you end the game and does some cool stuff. So first of all, you start this map. I wanted it to be completed in any order you wanted to, but due to the sequential order of the layers, that was rather impossible to achieve. So I had to do it in a certain order. So you do the bottom left first. Once you find the gem, which is right here, once you get that, it triggers this area, and this is another invisible area. But the gem is rather close, so you just have to figure out. It looks close, but it might not be. You never know. But anyway, it triggers the invisible section next. You can always go to the right, although it's a waste of time because you can't see anything, except, uh, well, I actually should change this slightly. Because every gem you pick, I put it inside the door, although you most likely will never come up here every single gem to showcase it. But I actually want to change this so you can view the top 2. So I'll go ahead and do that. That way you can view the top 2. But anyway, once you get the 2nd gem, the 3rd area unlocks. I got to change it here too. And this section unlocks. This is the trap area where you can't touch the walls at all. These are all animated tiles. And you have to make your way down to the gargoyle room, which is the puzzle I mentioned. You have to find the correct gargoyle. I won't say which one is correct, although you'll see it in my demo. But hopefully you won't remember by the time you play it yourself. So it's still a mystery of which one is true. But once you get the correct gargoyle, they all disappear, and you have to make your way back through this in order to get the gem. It unlocks. So getting the correct gargoyle unlocks the door. It also creates a shortcut here. It's not invisible unlike the rest. So if you notice, like here, you can't go through here, but once you find the correct gargoyle, these paths open up. to just so you don't have to walk all the way around or anything. Anyway, once you grab that gem, then it disables the trap, and so you can safely walk through. Again, there's some hidden blocks. Yeah, I forgot to mention there are hidden tiles in this level as well. Uh, Unlike the gargoyle, while I open certain paths, there are hidden blocks that you can pass through as well on this level after getting gems. But as before, I will not specify where in order to shorten time so you don't have to go through the entire thing again. Anyway, once you have all 3 gems, you make your way up to the final area, which is no puzzle at all. It's just congratulating you on winning the game. I kind of went crazy and did random stuff as of what I could think of. Uh, I say yay here. You might not see all of it since the darkness doesn't disappear until you pick up this gem. This means good job. And then I have a heart here with the final gem. And once you pick up the final gem, the darkness goes away completely, and the door opens here, and this is blocked off just so you go down this path. And then once you reach this area right here, that's when the gem animation happens. So I edit all of this to say it's by me. I did some sprites because I didn't notice until I almost completed this game that you can just drag this out and it displays everything correctly. Because this temple here, I painstakingly created by finding the correct tiles from the map I used, and I did not know I could just drag it out like this to get all the correct tiles. So I did a bunch of these, which are just these 8 tiles, I believe. And then these are all animated tiles, and although I missed one. Oh, one's incorrect. And then I also made 4 animated gems. So once you get to this screen, these 4 slots are animated. It basically starts with the color of the gem and just cycles through all of them. So they're all different at one time, but they're all the same 4 gems. And then once you hit the exit, then you're done. The game's over. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you start in the center of the screen, which is the temple here. All right, that concludes everything. Now to demo the game. Here's the start screen. I'm honestly not sure if the sound will be picked up, but I assume it will be, so it might be hard to hear me. So I will just play the game without talking. Anyway, press any key to play, and I will no longer be talking and just playing the game. Oh, whoops, my bad. I forgot to reset the variable. I was testing the when lose screen, and I forgot to change that back. There we go. The thundering sound is the background music. When you collide with the block, that's what that makes. As you see, you can only see a portion of the screen at one time. I paused there because the sound came back. You heard that clicking sound. That means the door opened. I guess I'll show you some of the secrets. You can walk through that door or walk through this wall. You cannot walk through it before you get the switch, but after you can. I'm not going to show every hidden wall you can walk through though, because I want some of them to be a surprise, but I will use some of them, I guess, just to shorten the video length. Anyway, once you get that switch, it spawned that key, so now you have to find the key. There's the sound it makes when you pick up the key. Oh, hit a dead end. Try to keep my talking down when the music is not playing. I do hope the sound comes in. I'm not entirely sure if it picks up on Google on airs. Oh. Oops, I went the wrong way. To pick up the other key first. I know the maze well from testing, but I still go the wrong way because of the darkness. There we go. As you can see, I regained health. Since I pick up a key, I get some health back. Now to the invisible section. There we go. There are multiple ways to complete the invisible sections. There's about 2 or 3 ways each maze. Now it loads map number 2. And since this saves a lot of time, I will use the shortcut here, but this will be the last one I show. It's this one. Allows you get, saves probably a good 30 seconds or a minute to get to the puzzle room. As you see, the timer just appeared over my head. Unlocks that. I'll intentionally run out of time, so watch my health, it's 97 right now. Now it's 82 and I'm back to this position and the maze is reset, or the puzzle room is reset. So you gotta be quick. Since I was slacking off, I'll miss it again. Now I'm down to 65 health. I'll get it this time. I'll actually, I'll demonstrate the time off one, where you can disable the time. See, the timer disappeared since I walked away, and it activates again once I come back. Once you get all 4, it displays a different message, as I mentioned. There's that sound. And I lied. I will show a third shortcut, which is that one. Because this map, I have more shortcuts that save a lot of time, where the second map doesn't have, it has shortcuts, but it doesn't save you as much time. And I got the final key, so now I gotta find the treasure chest. There is a shortcut for the treasure chest. Here's the treasure chest right there. There's a shortcut for it after you get that key, but I'm not going to use that one. And since I've only used that shortcut before, I actually have no idea how to get to the treasure chest. So it might take me a minute. I honestly do not know the normal method, but I know you can. In testing, I've always used the shortcut, so now I want to figure out how to get it without. Oh yeah, I think I remember. I gotta go all the way over here. Actually might end up dying because of all the health lost I took. Because your health doesn't reset when you get to the second level. Yeah, it saves you a lot of time with the shortcuts in this level. I honestly do not know if I'm going the right way. I am. I'm back at the... Yep. I'm lost in the darkness. Should have used the shortcut. Alright, I'm gonna cheat. Open up Mappy back up. You know it's bad when even the creator gets lost. Let's see. Okay. So I gotta go back. Oh, kinda in the right direction. You know the darkness is working when even I get lost, and I made the map. So I go this way, down here, something like that. Goes this way. Yeah. There we go. Here's the treasure room. Here's the treasure sound. Which was totally overshadowed by the background music. Then the darkness is gone, as you see once you get the treasure chest and you make your way to the exit. There's the sound for completing the level, and now it starts level 2. As you can see, my health did not decrease, and I'm off to this one. Oh, I went the wrong way. In this maze, there's multiple paths to the gem. I believe there's 2, so either way works. So I just find the one that gets me there. And if you glance real closely, I spelled my name here, although you can't see it as well in the darkness. There's the sound for the gem, and as you can see, you can now see more of the screen. And I gained 10 health back. So I actually won't die. So I can demo everything in one go, except the other screen. For when you lose. As I stated, there is a secret path to get to the middle faster, but I'm not using it here. It doesn't seem... It saves a little bit of time, but nowhere near as much as map number 1 shortcuts did. Those saved you. Map 1 shortcut saved you a lot more time than here. And I'm lost because I've always used that shortcut, so it took me a little bit to get back. Now you make your way up to the invisible section. Now you can see more of the screen. You make your way back onto the third and final section. Since The fourth section is just for fun, saying you beat the game. And here's where the animated tiles come in. Wait for the music to die down a little bit. When you hit one, it does that sound and you lose 10 health. Won't do it anymore because I need to complete the level. And if you might notice, you lose 2 health every 15 seconds instead of 1 in this level. No. Health is actually not decreasing. Maybe when I took out that timer, I broke it. Maybe I did need it. Oops. Might be able to hear the gargoyle sound. The background played at the wrong time there. I'll have to fix the health timer. Because, yeah, I guess I thought I didn't need it, but I did. Then once you get the gem, the landscape changes a little, and now you've completed the game. Make your way up to the fourth gem. There's the yay. You can't see the good job because of the darkness. There's the heart. You get the final gem. Darkness is completely gone. And once you make your way down to here, it'll activate the final layer. Then that plays, I think I played it only once. Then you make your way to the exit and you completed the game. And it just says you've bested the dangers of the dungeon, you found a massive treasure room, and you're rich for the rest of your years. I actually had a lot of trouble finding a font for this or a color because the background's yellow. So I know it is a little bit hard to read, but cyan was actually the best color I could find that made it mostly visible. And it's just the end of the game. Told you how many minutes it took to complete it, which for me it took 9 minutes because I knew where everything was at. And then you press any key to exit. So right now, I actually do not remember where I removed that. Oh, yeah, I reset it down here, I think. I actually do not remember where I removed that, the time reset at. But I'll fix it when I submit the game. Anyway, I'll showcase the lose screen as well. I'll just, oh, I didn't showcase the death screen. I'll do that too. So if I just set this to true, it'll go to the losing screen. This is what happens when you die. It plays that over and over. If you recall the line I removed down here where I destroyed the background music, that was when I was testing the losing screen, so I didn't have to play through the game. So I destroyed the background music, so normally you wouldn't hear it. So if I destroy it here, this is what it'll normally be like when you get to the losing screen. No, apparently I did not do it right. Well, anyway, the background music won't play when you get to the losing screen. Oh, that's because I put it too far down. It was just for testing. There. So death has taken you, your remains will forever remain inside. as no one is sane enough to look for you. So you won't hear the background music when you lose. And now for when you die, just need to change a few variables. Set that back to false, increment map, and I need to change the load. I'd have to quickly go through the map because I have to play through the first 2 sections on its own. So I'm just gonna maximize map speed and disable the collision. This is what I used for testing, but I just want to showcase what happens when you die. Since I can just do that, I guess. That was the death animation. Make a sound. All right. Now, all right. I believe that concludes the end of this video and this class. This is Alex Brown signing off for Computer Science 440. This was game number 5. Goodbye.